Who the fuck is vacuuming?
Hey, I'm recording over here.
Oi, I'm pooping over here.
Quit.
What is that from?
I don't know.
Oi, I'm pooping over here.
Is that from something?
I think so.
Shut the fuck up.
All right. Howdy, folks. Welcome to another episode of the West Loop. It's me, Cam, once again. Here with Kale, once again.
I'm here.
And today's going to be a little bit of a different episode. We kind of had this idea when we started this podcast that we'd have kind of like different topics where we'd take turns kind of like presenting and just like talking about different things that probably like contribute to both of us, but we're still going to have a couple of our regular segments that we'll get into to start, and then Kale's kind of give to us a little lesson on shift work in our brains. So, yeah. But why don't we start off with 93 to Infinity, which is, we got a lot here. I guess the biggest thing is this week, obviously, we have the inauguration of good old Joe Biden. So, yeah, previous histories, we had the inauguration of Obama and the inauguration of Donald Trump.
Which one do you have? I think had a bigger crowd. No, just joking.
Definitely Trump, for sure. Yeah. It just makes me think of that What is America episode where... Did you ever watch that series, by the way?
Yeah, the Sacha Baron
The episode
one.
where he's like the Bush fan and he's in the wheelchair and he's like trying to show this guy that there's clearly more people at the Trump inauguration than the Obama, and then when you zoom in on the people at the Obama, that they're just like dummies, like they're not real people. And I can't remember who the politician was, but he's just like, what the fuck is this? Like, this is so fake. Like,
It's so funny.
Oh yeah, no. Yeah, this could be an interesting week. I've read a couple articles about like the shit that they're doing to like protect the inauguration. Like they've banned all Airbnbs
Really?
in all of Washington D.C. area, kind of thing. The only way you can get one is if you rented it for a whole month. Like if it's a month or longer, then they allow it. But if you're, because like apparently Airbnb, especially with the pandemic, has like a monthly rental option now.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, so I'm sure they've always had that, but and they're not allowing firearms on any planes that are going towards Washington D.C.
That's unconstitutional.
Yeah, there's a bunch of different things I read, and then there's things I've been hearing on the other side. Like apparently a lot of these like bigger far right movement names have been getting Bitcoin deposited to them from like some well-known people or something like that to like incentivize them to go do something or cause shit.
That's wild.
Yeah, who knows? It's gonna be interesting. I'm sure it'll go down pretty normal, but
yeah, I'm sure that
hopefully, anyways.
I don't think they're not gonna let them like get away with it a second time, right? Like,
yeah.
Okay, you had your tantrum. Now the teeth come out, kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure someone will try something. I'm sure we won't, like, as viewers, if you're viewing the actual inauguration, won't notice anything, but you know there's damn well some security guards taking down some fools somewhere during that event.
Probably.
Yeah, I don't know. Do you want to get into the next one you got here?
Yeah, sure. Like, there's not really much. It's just like, as far as like going through, like, I just remember it felt like such a fucking crazy big deal when Obama got inaugurated. Like, what would that have been, 2008? Like, we would have been just starting high school.
Well, I think that was kind of just when we were getting in, like into politics, I guess, more understanding politics.
Or
So
trying
yeah,
to,
to
yeah.
me, yeah, trying to, and like obviously it was like implemented more so in school in that realm. But yeah, I remember it being a huge deal.
Well, yeah, that was kind of another one of those things that felt like, oh, history's still being made, but it's interesting how 2008 felt like, oh man, things are so crazy different now because like they're swearing in the first like black president, and then yeah, he gets kind of sworn in again or whatever, like reelected in 2012, and it's just like I don't know. It's interesting how much didn't change. Like he kind of comes in and then all of a sudden there's like in the middle of like a financial meltdown and like it's more so
Yeah.
looking back in retrospect because I didn't feel this way at the time because I was just a dumb teenager that didn't know anything. But reading from people that were politically involved at the time, it sounds kind of a bummer that like there was a lot of actual hope around Obama that like he sold the idea that there was going to be some big changes. And then as the global economy melted down and he bailed out the banks while he let other people get their homes evicted or get evicted from their homes, it's kind of just like, oh, okay. It's just again, just these big symbolic changes. Like it's a big deal because we made a big change to the way things look, but the
Hmm.
underlying structure is exactly the same. And it's
Yeah.
interesting how that was to be reflected, but just the other way with Trump. Like, if Obama was this sense of hope that we're finally going to get the changes that we want from the left, and then those hopes were kind of dashed on the rocks of reality. Same thing for the kind of make America great again types with Trump. They
Yeah.
had this big moment. Finally, we got our guy in there, and then literally pretty much nothing changes. It's
Well, like in a lot of ways, I feel like Trump was the best thing that could ever happen to Obama because, like,
yeah, it
I
kind of
do think a
absolved him
lot
of
of people.
any
Yeah, exactly.
yeah,
Like, I think a lot of people, like, he still gets praised now because I get why he gets praised. Absolutely, and I
and in
mean,
like
he's such a
contrast to Trump,
well-spoken
right?
person. But there was a lot of things that went down, and I mean, and a lot of shitty things that he ended up doing, and I think that kind of got forgotten when all of a sudden people had to realize, fuck, we got 4 years of Donald Trump, and he,
Exactly, right? And then they could like pin racism on individual people again. Like Donald Trump's a racist and he's making racists feel better about doing racist shit
yeah,
versus the discussion around Obama is like, oh my god, so electing the first black president didn't like take the boot off the necks of minorities at all? Like he still ordered the fucking National Guard to the like Dakota Access Pipeline and friggin' fire hosed a bunch of indigenous people trying to protect their land. Like
hmm
Obama was kind of the perfect proof that it's the system itself that's racist. But then with Trump come along, we could like kind of push it back onto individuals again. And,
yeah. No, I totally get what you mean. I agree. Yeah,
but yeah, I don't know. Just an interesting contrast that they feel so different, but they almost felt like to me anyway, like mirror images of each other. Just like giving people like aesthetic, symbolic things. Like here, we'll make it look
hmm
the way you want, but the idea of like changing the way things work is just out of the question. We're just
but
fighting over dressing at this point.
I think it was slightly different in the fact that I agree, like with the giving the left what they want, giving the right what they want, but I don't know, like maybe it's my lack of knowledge of like the period of time, like when that when it happened. But did the right know that Donald Trump was what they wanted, or was it the fact that everyone just knew they didn't want Hillary? Like I feel like Trump became this person for the right people as he was more so in office and was revealing a lot of who he was over time, and then they kind of realized like this is our person as compared to like they knew right off the bat, like before the election even went, that this was their person. I don't
Yeah,
know. Like it's more just like speculating because I mean, just talking about like when that election went down, kind of thing.
I can see. I think you're right, and it's just like two different things. I think like the most like rabid right people that like identify with that moniker, I think they knew he was their guy from the get go, right? Like whether it
Yeah.
was his coded shit about like Mexico's not sending their best and all that shit, and the wall, like he was definitely like signaling to those kind of more wacky types. But I do think you're right that that is why he. It's not those people aren't why he won. Like those people knew that he was their guy from the get go, but they're not that. That's not a large portion, even in America. That's not a large portion of the population. And you're probably right
No.
that over his 4 years, more and more people maybe were attracted to that as things continued to get worse. But I think you're right that like that's the only reason he won is just because it's not so much that people went to Trump because they didn't like Hillary, but more so the people that didn't like Hillary just stayed home.
Yeah.
And so I think it's probably like a two-factor thing there.
Yeah. Well, it's just crazy because it's like I think that's half the problem. And I mean, it's been discussed. Definitely, I'm sure it's just been discussed a lot of the time, but half the problem, at least with the last couple of years or a couple of elections, is it's just the Democratic Party struggling to find a representative.
Yeah.
Like they gave you Hillary, which clearly like that was a fucking like that. Like realistically, I think you put anyone else in Hillary's seat, like Trump probably wouldn't even have won that election.
Well, that was the thing is that like that was probably like the most winnable election for the Democrats. Like they to the point where like Hillary even like they kind of fixed the Republican primary. Like they pushed for Trump to be the nominee because they figured he'd be so much more like beatable.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you can't counter that with then the most unlikable Democratic candidate you have. Like that's just like
yeah,
it was their election to lose and they did it basically.
Well, and I think that was what was so shitty about that time, from what I remember. It was just like so much news sources and stuff were just feeding us like this, like focusing on the fact that she was female and like trying to convince you like get this first female. We got the first black politician as president. Now let's get the first female, and it's like it wasn't about her being female. Like I think a female president would be fantastic, but
yeah, for sure.
I'm not just gonna vote any female in. Like this person was a criminal, and if she was any regular citizen in society, she'd be behind bars. So it's
well, that's exactly it. Like that's the difference between like real feminism, which is like helping women. Like honestly, like the patriarchy and all that stuff is real, but this idea that Hillary Clinton is an oppressed person, like fuck off. Like again, it becomes about this symbolic, like visual kind of aesthetic stuff where it's just like it doesn't matter like the actual like lived experience of oppression that women feel as a result of their like gender, but it's more so like just how that is compounded with other forms of like privilege. And so like again, yeah, it's missing the point that hey, equality means women can be shitty people too, and that's exactly what Hillary is, a shitty person, not because she's a woman but because
exactly, yeah,
just another person like the rest of us. Like
but I'm curious too, like about this election. Like, I know Biden, to a lot of people, to a majority of the people, wasn't what they wanted.
No.
Like, it was just like. But I also don't know, like, not comparing it between the two elections. Like, I think no matter what, it still would have been close. Like, I think that shows kind of how crazy things got in the last 4 years. Is like, despite the chaos, Trump grew his following by a lot, and like had convinced and persuaded a lot of this far right kind of stuff, right?
And guess who he gained in? Like demographics that Trump gained voters in, Black and Hispanic men.
Yeah.
So this idea that like racism is what animated the majority, like I'm sure it did part of his support, but it's not all of it. People are unhappy with the way things are fucking going, and as much as Trump is a product of the current system, he presents himself as an alternative to it. So that's what people are responding to, not so much the racism in Trump himself, but just the idea of something outside of the fucking shitty box we're stuck in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would have been really, really curious to see what would have went down, like, had someone else been sitting in that Democratic seat. Like, I don't know. I know this name always gets thrown out, but like, if it was Bernie Sanders, I mean, everyone thought back in 2016? Yeah, 2016. If Bernie Sanders was in that seat, we would have never have seen Trump in office, and I truly do believe that too.
I think so.
But this time around, I don't know. Like, I honestly don't know. Like, it's kind of curious. Like, it's interesting to see.
Well, I don't know. Bernie did grow his support from 2016, but yeah, it was a closer election, I guess. So I don't know.
Yeah.
And both
Yeah,
times, like you can get into conspiracy bullshit, but a lot of it is there is some paper trails there. But both times there was like a concerted effort between like behind like the scenes of like the Democratic Party, like kind of administration orchestrating all they can to make sure he's not the guy.
yeah. No, I've talked to a few people about that because I'm not super familiar for that, but it's definitely opened my eyes to that for sure, and it sounds pretty fucked up.
And that's pretty much why we got Joe Biden. Like even the Democratic Party didn't want Joe Biden, but just
Yeah,
out of the people that were there, he had the most like name recognition, the most like pull kind of within the party, and so it became just like, well, who's the guy that could stop Bernie? And so then like you've never seen fucking Elizabeth Warren coming off of like doing pretty well, or even that Pete Buttigieg guy doing way better than he should have. All of a sudden, they just all coordinated and dropped out at the same time,
yeah,
right before Super Tuesday or whatever. It's just like that's never happened before. You know, old Barry picked up the phone, Mr. Obama, and like, hey, can you guys do me a favor here?
yeah, yeah. No, I know. I think with like and I think that's kind of why he gets the press he does, is his relations to Obama and being vice president and stuff like
I
that.
think because he reminds people of that brief, like, hopeful time, right, post 2008, like, kind of.
Yeah,
Even though it was getting worse for most people, if you were fairly insulated from it all, like that stretch from 28 to like 2016 felt like we're making progress, yay! And then it all kind of fell apart with Trump, and so people aren't even actually wanting to make things better or change things for the better. It's just like, oh my god, take me back to the time when I didn't have to care about politics.
that's actually, I think he killed it with that because that's true. That's 100% true. Because I think Trump has made people who generally don't give a shit about politics care because they like don't like what's going on. But
Yeah,
I mean, and the voting shows it. Like generally, people don't give a fuck about politics. And I
no,
get it.
yeah,
I
they're
mean, the
smart
way
for
things are
doing so.
done, it's why would you? Because no matter what, you lose. It seems like
Yeah,
anymore,
exactly.
or
Like,
not anymore in general. Like it's just so it's just like I get why there's this belief to not care. And I mean, now this election showed otherwise, but I'm sure come the next election, you're going to see a drastic change
oh
in
yeah.
voter show up for sure.
Well, especially once Biden comes in and most people's lives aren't going to change that much compared to what it was under Trump. Like that's going to just like kind of
Hmm.
reinforce the
Some,
notion that why bother because you don't get anything in return for caring about this shit.
yeah, some will get better, some will get shittier. Like
Yeah.
it's just like, yeah,
But yeah, and
but
that's kind of yeah, that's our march from 93 to becoming politically aware.
yeah,
The two alternate timelines of Obama and then Trump being inaugurated.
hmm why don't we get with the dumbest Burton of the week?
Yeah, this is a little showdown for the dumbest Burton of the week this week. We couldn't decide off air, so yeah, we got two front runners for our dumbest Burton of the week here. First up is UCP MLA Drew Barnes out of Medicine Hat. So, in the wake of all that Capitol Hill shit, everybody's been aware of this like debate about free speech and all that, with Trump getting banned from basically every fucking platform, starting with Twitter. And so that kind of sparked a reaction of a bunch of these right winger guys going to this Parler social network. And most people haven't heard of it if you're a normal, sane person, but if you're psychotically online like myself, I'm aware of Parler. It's basically been just known as like a Nazi nest, you know? It's like the fucking psycho far right. It's like Gab, which is another similar one. It's just like an alternative social media platform for, you know, people that have some more unsavory views. They feel that they have more freedom of speech on these platforms. And so most people were already aware of it, but now it's kind of coming to the fore of the conversation that these things are not good. So this fucking MLA from Medicine Hat tweets out something about going to join the conversation on Parler. He's bragging he started a Parler account on the same day that later it gets removed from like the App Store and Google Play for being a hotbed of like far right sentiment. Like
Oh, that's funny.
total lack of self awareness. This guy.
Yeah, I don't even know what to think about that, man. That's fucked up.
You're not supposed to advertise those unsavory views if you're in public office.
Yeah, I know it's fucked up. Like, I have never heard of Parler, to be honest, but I don't know. Like we kind of were talking about this before. Like I still don't know where I stand on this whole restricting people's voices, but it's tough, right?
Yeah, that is a whole other conversation. That like, I mean, I just yeah, it's tough because like there's so many different factors to consider. It's like okay, so if we ban them all from the one that we're on, they're off in the shadows discussing their shit away from everybody now. They're gonna find more less
Yeah,
public
like,
places to discuss their bullshit.
and that's kind of what I mean. Like I feel like Twitter, and I know like there's this element where people feel as though they can say anything on Twitter, and I get that. But they're also in some ways there's like they're being held accountable for what they say because they're getting as much as maybe they're getting supporters, they're getting backlash,
Mm-hmm.
and like to just go. I mean, not that like Parlor would do anything. I feel like it would just be them just kind of in a circle jerk together, just kind of doing whatever they want to do together because they're all the same opinion.
Yeah.
Um, but I don't know, man. I just like not that I want to put this in the same realm as like cancel culture or anything like that, but it is. It's just a. I don't know. I just don't know how I feel about. And I don't get me wrong. Like fuck Donald Trump, and I there's a element where I want to be like fuck yeah, like screw this guy, like.
Mm-hmm.
But then I see like so many. A big thing like I've seen on some of my social media is a lot of these Hollywood people kind of thing are sharing YouTube's getting big backlash because they announced they're only banning him for 2 weeks because they have a 3 strike policy and this is just his first strike. And so now
Well,
they're like someone photoshopped the YouTube logo with like Trump's head or something
oh my
like
god.
that, and they're like calling it like a Trump supporting platform, and it's just like for Christ's sakes, people, like it's not just black. It's not black and white like that. Like
That's not. And
and
there's way worse shit on YouTube than anything Trump's
and
ever
that's the
fucking
thing
put
that
on
I think
there.
bothers me is think about how many fucking child pedophiles or how many much like
There's just
just
so much Nazi shit
crazy,
on there, man.
disgusting people are on Twitter, and this person who generally like yeah he in like incited this riot, but he sent out a tweet a month ago saying something like along the lines of people show up on this day.
Yeah.
Other than that, he didn't use the Twitter platform, to my knowledge, like
To
that much. Like
organize
he
these people or to like.
and I know that some random person could hear me talk about that, and they're like, "Fuck this Trump supporting asshole." It's like, I'm not a Trump supporter in any way, shape, or form, but I just think that getting to a place where we start banning people for what they say online is just gonna slowly turn into this go-to thing anytime something says something that's questionable,
Yeah.
and I know then that's gonna just go further and further to the point where we're gonna lose like that freedom in that sense, right? Like it's just like I don't know.
Lots of things. And people always try to get you with this gotcha of like, well, free speech is only when the government restricts your speech. Like, Twitter is a private platform. And it's just like, you're fucking telling on yourself. So are you telling me you're okay with a private citizen deciding what other people get to say and not? Like this fucking Jack Dorsey, CEO of Twitter guy? Like, you're okay with him deciding what's protected speech and what's not? That seems kind of fucked up. Like, that seems to fly in the face of free speech. This idea that we all have the equal right to say whatever the fuck we want. And but yeah, like just to give that control to someone else is that seems not okay. Like it's not so much I don't have the idea of banning someone from a public
Yeah.
platform. That's yeah, I think there's probably some speech that is dangerous that needs to be regulated.
No,
But it's
absolutely.
more so the question of who's enforcing it, and that's the part that worries me.
Yeah. And like, yeah, no, I agree. Like, I get it. There's gonna be people, but like, to my knowledge, I don't think they've ever done this before.
No,
They've like,
not like this.
so it's just like, and you
Smaller
know
people.
damn well, there's probably some nasty ass people on this platform doing a fucking stupid shit, questionable shit, illegal shit, and it's like, so now all of a sudden, like, we're just gonna do it to Donald Trump, like,
Yeah.
and I get it, and it's kind of cool and kind of interesting, and like, fuck Donald Trump, so like, why not? But at the same time, it's like, is this the option? Like, the
Yeah.
fact of the matter is the guy's gonna be out of office in fucking 3 days. So really, what more is he gonna do?
I think that's the key.
And ultimately, is who are like these people? I don't care. These people would do that shit with or without Trump sending a single fucking tweet out. Like, I don't care what people say about that. Like, these people
exactly
are the problem too. Like, I get it. Like, you take mentally unstable people and you put someone in power in front of them to tell them to do something, chances are they're going to do it. But I don't buy that. Like, these people knew what they were doing were wrong. It's not like they were being controlled by some greater power.
Yeah, if they didn't see a tweet, they wouldn't, like, it's not going to stop them. Maybe it's the inciting incident, but there might have been another one down the road. Like,
I'm probably contradicting myself in some way from the last episode, but it's more just to kind of like had some time to sit with me and how I feel
your
about
opinions are allowed to change.
Yeah.
That's another thing that gets me with the fucking online stuff is like if you have a take from like 2 months ago that was wrong and it's like, well, you're an idiot, you're wrong, you're going to be wrong forever. It's just like, no, like new information comes in and you can change your mind on things. I think that's what we talked about that before, people being scared to be wrong, and I think that's why. Because as soon as you have something out there that people can portray as wrong, or you have the wrong thought, then you're just entirely discredited, and that's kind of frustrating. I think the biggest thing for me though is like you mentioned that they're doing it now, right before he's almost out of office, and I think that's literally why. Like, how many fucking people went on a mass shooting and had some fucking manifesto where they said Donald Trump like inspired them? They didn't fucking ban him after that. Like, this idea that they're doing it for, like, public safety or, like, out of the greater good. Like, no, they're not. It's because it was profitable to have this fucking madman on your platform fucking spewing bullshit. And now, to keep him on there would make you look bad because he's not the president anymore, so you don't really have an excuse. So now you make this big gesture like you're protecting vulnerable populations by deplatforming this hate speech. And it's just like, fuck you. It's you probably ran some graphs and now it's not profitable anymore, so now you do it. And then it's like a PR campaign. Like, see, look how responsible we are. We're getting this inflammatory rhetoric off of our platform. It's like, well, you didn't do it 4 fucking years ago because people wanted to see what crazy shit he was saying and they were using your platform and you were fucking profiting from it. And so it always comes back down to their motives, and it's always fucking profit motivated.
I that's actually, I never even thought about it on that side, and that actually makes me even that much more angry about the situation, because I think it's completely right. Like, and it's and like you, and the funny thing with YouTube is how many people have even checked out, or is there even a Donald Trump YouTube page?
I don't think so.
Like, maybe. So it's just like, why are they getting shit because they're not jumping on this fucking weird ass train? It's just like, Christ, like, I don't know.
Because now it's all about the symbolic actions. We don't actually want anybody to like do anything about the fact that someone can jump on these things and incite violence. We just want you to take a stand. You need to be on the right team, the right side. You need to say, like, here's the line in the sand now. Twitter's drawn it. You got to ban Donald Trump, or otherwise you're a Trumper. And so fucking do the thing to prove you're fucking on the right team, you know? And so YouTube's probably done the same thing. Like, they probably have done the fucking calculations. They're like, I don't know. We're going to lose more profit if we fucking keep them off the platform, so we're not going to do it. Like,
but I don't even know if they would. Like, because, like we said, I don't think he's really on the platform.
No, but I just mean, like, probably PR-wise, like, if you had enough people angry at them on the other side that they kicked them off, like, there's got to be some calculation in there. Like, it's this idea that corporations behave along a moral axis is hilarious. Like,
and like, I get this. I don't know. Like, I get this has probably changed the path of Donald Trump out of office. Like, these events.
I think
I think that's good. I mean, I think of anything before people cry about banning him off a social media website. Why don't we cry for the fact that this man should be fucking charged, or his little posse as well? Like, I don't give a shit about banning someone on a social media platform. I give a shit about having someone accountable for something illegally they've done and not using their privilege to avoid that.
Well, and that's the word, accountable. And this idea that you can hold them accountable. Literally, like, the job description, the thing that makes being the president of the United States means that you're not fucking accountable to shit. Yeah. It's literally what the role gives you. And so this idea that you're going to change the rules now for Trump is like, no, like they can't open that can of worms. They cannot open the door to the idea of a president actually paying for their crimes. They can't let that be a possibility. So what do they do? Instead, they ban him from Twitter.
Yeah. And then obviously, like, it's gone to impeachment again or whatever this process is. And now it's gone to a vote where he could be impeached, which I didn't fully understand that at first. But I guess the whole reason for that is just so that he can't run again in 2024. Because he's already going to be out of office anyways. Which, I mean, I don't know. There's part of me that, like, doesn't even necessarily, like, impeach the fucker, who cares? Charge the fucker, that would be nice. But, like, at the same time, it's just, like, do we actually think this fucking idiot would win in 2024? Like, is that a possibility? Like, and if that's a possibility, there's a greater fucking issue than Donald Trump in America.
Yeah.
Like really. Like, I don't know.
Doubt. No, but it's fun.
This isn't another Trump episode again.
No, I don't want that. So, yeah, essentially all that to say.
Yeah. So option one.
We need to have our politicians have free speech so they can do dumb shit like this so that we can see what the fuck they're up to.
Yeah, honestly, man. Like, fuck, I don't know. So, like, are they, like, I don't know. So, anyways, option one for dumbest bird in the week.
Yeah. We got fucking...
Medicine Hat MLA
Drew Barnes
supporting Parler after realizing shortly after the platform was shut down.
Yeah.
And then what's option two?
Option two is not any specific, but just a group of Edmonton City police officers. So, I mean, we heard it was sad that cop got ran over at, like, a routine check stop. I'm not...
In Calgary,
like, obviously, right? Yeah, in Calgary. He was at a check stop and somebody tried to flee and ran him over and killed him. It's depressing. I don't want people to die. It is interesting how quickly every COVID guideline was completely waived so that they could have a massive funeral procession and fucking fighter jets flying over the city and shit. But that's a whole other separate conversation. I mean, they waived all the limits so that they could go have a funeral for this guy. Meanwhile, everybody else, if your family's dying, you're shit out of luck. But a group of Edmonton cruisers were on the way down for this procession. And so 6 of them were in a convoy headed to the Calgary Police Headquarters when they crashed on McKnight Boulevard near 47th Street Northeast. And so 12 police members in the vehicles involved. And so, yeah, 2 vehicles sustained minor mechanical and body damage, 3 had minor body damage, and 1 wasn't damaged. So the 6 vehicles were one behind the other, and the cause is still being determined. I read a different article that they were doing some sort of, like, coordinated driving maneuver. So they must have been trying to pull off some sort of fucking cop car chase stunt or some shit. And yeah, they all fucking crashed. All
oh my
cruisers.
God.
It's just like...
Did they miss the funeral?
They must have.
Like, fuck. Oh.
Yeah, the cruisers involved in the crash were not part of the official procession, so they didn't make it to do the parade. These fucking guys, I don't know, it's just... You give these guys all these tools and all these toys and all this money, and they're just big bumbling idiots.
Yeah. Well, and what the fuck, like, why? You're driving by yourself. Was it like you're trying to show off, trying to look cool? Like,
they must have been, right? Like, ooh, we get to do the convoy coordinated maneuver. Like, just like in the simulations, boys.
Is it like where in football you're running in a line and the one at the back has to drive to the front?
Like, literally, I think it's something like that. Like, they're drafting off of each other.
Yeah. Or they're, like, doing in-betweens. Like, oh my God.
One of them tried to pull a Paul Walker. Just bad all around, but...
Well, hopefully it's not our tax dollars paying for all those new cop
you
cars.
know it is, buddy. You know it is.
Yeah.
Even if it was, like, an actual fuck-up, they won't be reprimanded at all. Cars will be fixed for them. A couple of them did have minor injuries, and I mean... They're going to get paid time off for that, which is like fine. Like, I'm not arguing. Obviously, anybody that gets injured, you should be able to fucking pay your bills. But it's funny how they get it, but we don't.
Yeah. Well, dumbest Burton of the week.
Yeah, was there?
I don't know. I kind of like the cops, to be honest, just because
I
like
know.
the Parlor account, like the guy's an idiot, but this guy probably, I don't know.
It's like less harmful, I guess. Like it's funny that he's dumb that he did that the same day it got tweeted, but or the same day it got shut down. But he didn't know that was coming, and also it's not so much dumb as it is malicious to have interest in wanting to go to Parlor. Like,
Mm-hmm. Whereas these cops, they're just dumb.
Yeah, that's
like
so
that's
dumb.
the definition of dumb. And
that's hilarious.
what a Burton thing to do
Yeah,
too.
totally,
like what
yeah.
that is the definition of dumbest Burton.
Dumbest
of the week,
Burton.
right?
Doing some stupid stunts while you're driving in the middle of winter and fucking up all you and your buddy's car.
Yeah. Yeah. So the Edmonton cops involved in that crash, you are our dumbest Burtons of the week.
Here.
Yeah, your award will be in the mail.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we want to take a quick break before we get into the main segment?
We'll take a little break here, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to lecture all of y'all about how we're not sleeping enough and we're literally slowly killing ourselves by not doing it. Some fun health science stuff coming up.
Well, yeah. See you in a bit.
Alrighty, we're coming back from break here, and yeah, usually earlier in the episode, Cam was talking about how we kind of would like to do more of these, just a little more of a specific topic, and so the one that I went with, just because, I don't know, it's been such a huge kind of positive impact on my life, is just kind of reassessing my sleep. So I just wanted to come in here and lecture all of y'all about fucking sleeping enough. It started, I read this book called Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker. He's a neuroscientist. And he's been studying like sleep for like 20 years now. And so I guess a specific quote from him that I just want to like kind of lay, like this is kind of how important it is. But he says here that every major system, tissue, and organ of your body suffers when sleep becomes short. No aspect of your health can retreat at the sign of sleep loss and escape unharmed. And so it's, at least for me personally, I always viewed sleep as like this inconvenience. Like it was annoying that I had to waste so much of my time sleeping. I would like resist going to bed early because I felt like I didn't get everything done I wanted to in a day, and I'd stay up late to like get time for myself kind of thing. And for so long, yeah, it felt like it was almost like a waste of time. But after reading this book, it definitely fucking changed my views on it quite a bit. More so just because it's not so much like, yeah, it feels like you're wasting time, but it makes the time that you are awake so much better if you're sleeping enough. And so yeah, I just really wanted to kind of just go do like a little overview. I don't know, like how's you're saying you already saying you were tired today. How'd you sleep last night, Cam?
I didn't sleep the best, to be honest. It took me a while to get to sleep, which I find is probably like my number one problem with sleep in general. Like, I'm a pretty good sleeper. I don't have a whole lot of problems with sleep other than I do shift work. Yeah, no, it wasn't the best. It took me a while to get to sleep, but I mean, I still probably got a solid 6 hours, which I can't complain about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and that was kind of my MO. It was like 6-7-ish hours and stuff like that. And yeah, like it gets to the point where you feel like it's like enough. And he kind of talks about that too. Specifically how we kind of like your baseline starts to become your norm. So just like even if you're only sleeping 6 hours a night, it becomes so normal that you feel like you're fine kind of thing. But he does demonstrate that even that you're at like a disadvantage. Like you're at a lower capacity than you normally would be if you're sleeping better or more.
Yeah. It's weird for me. Like so like for example, I'll just pan out my week here. So I get home from work at 11:30 at the latest. Like working evening shifts when I'm on an evening shift rotation,
Mm.
and I have a tough time settling after an evening shift. Like I usually come home, brush my teeth, wash my face, go to bed, but then I'm like in bed, like on my phone, and obviously, yeah, like the blue light and stuff, but
Mm-hmm.
I can't just go right to bed after an evening shift. So it's usually about 1:30 before I've probably like phone off, starting to close my eyes, and then I probably fall asleep by 2:30. Um, and so then I sleep 3:30, 4:30, 5:30, 6:30. So I sleep for about 4 or 5 hours, and then I'll get up with Logan before she goes to work, make her some breakfast, have breakfast with her, and then I go back to bed. Sometimes, not all the time. I should more, and I do. But then, so say I sleep from 8 to like 10:30. So that's another 2.5. So then I'm getting that like 7-ish hours.
Hmm.
I feel like garbage
Yeah.
the last few times I've done that. And it's like, I'm not oversleeping, because that's not like an over amount of sleep, but I don't know, man. It's weird. And then sometimes I've slept like till 11 or noon, and then I feel even more like shit. But
Yeah,
I
that
don't
could be
I
like
don't know. I truly don't think I've found my perfect amount of sleep. Um, like I feel good today. I'm a little tired, but I feel like I'm always a little tired.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's tough with shift work, and I'm sure you're gonna get into it. But like I think shift work has fucked me completely. Because
Mm-hmm.
I used to be your like late night to bed but sleep till noon or 1 kind of kid, and then as I got older it was like still like 10, 11 guaranteed on the weekends, even sometimes noon still. But then now, man, like I could be up at 6, 7 o'clock like pretty easily. Like it doesn't bother me too much. Like I'm tired, but my cycle's just fucked.
Yeah, dude. Well, he does kind of touch on a lot of that in the book about how like our orientation of work and work schedules and things like that. It does kind of fly in the face of some people's sleep patterns. So it's interesting that you say like the late night, late to rise thing. For so long, we've portrayed that as like almost like a lazy trait, but that's not the case. He finds in here that like people's kind of sleeping does tend to fall into one of two broad camps kind of thing, and like the whole night owl versus morning lark thing. And he said something like about 30% of people fall into either one, and then the rest of the 30% kind of fall somewhere in between. But yeah, it is. There's most people like so about a third of people will be like kind of in bed by like 9, 10, up by 6 or like 5, like with the sunrise. Basically, they'll be awake, and then other people tend to wake up later in the day, like closer to noon, sometimes after, and that's like almost like an evolutionary uh, phenomenon, because like if you thought of people not co-sleeping as individual families or couples but as like a community, like tribal relations, it would make sense that you'd have people going down early and then waking up early, and then the other people going down later, waking up later, so then it like reduces the amount of time that the whole tribe is asleep at the same time, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And so it kind of like the current way that we orientate like the workday, like the 9 to 5 up at 7 kind of thing, really fucks with that like night owl population, because like they're naturally meant to like wake up later and then be more alert later. So literally by the time they're hitting their like peak alertness and like cognitive function, it's time to go home for the day. And so he does talk about how we kind of need to reorientate that, because some people just aren't built to be waking up at fucking 7 and going to bed early, because like they get kind of screwed over both ways. They get their sleep cut short by waking up too early, and then they lose out on sleep because they can't fall asleep early enough, essentially.
Well, and I think for you kind of get even the more fucked in the sense that you have to work 12s.
Yeah, that really.
So like that doesn't really give you an option. It's like one or the other. Like I kind of get a happy medium with an evening shift, because it's like I can stay up later, but I can still sleep in, but it's not like I'm staying up all night.
Yeah, I know exactly. Like, so
Whereas
for one
like
of those, like,
you have the far like morning or the far night like
yeah, I
going
know I'm
on.
fucked either way. Because I think I'd probably fall more into that. Like, I'd wake up around 9 or 10, stay up till, like, kind of midnight 1 kind of thing. But, yeah, I just can't do that on days.
Yeah, like I honestly can't remember a time where I went to bed before 10 o'clock. It's been years,
Yeah.
like
Well, I
years.
only started doing that this year, trying to make day shifts less miserable for myself. And I definitely did. Like, once you kind of get into the groove of, like,
I also
being
don't
able to
work
fall
day
asleep early
shifts,
enough. But,
so
yeah, that helps
I
too.
haven't had an opportunity to work day shifts for almost 3 years now, and so when I was working days, though, I honestly don't know if I ever went to bed earlier than 10, but I know I probably should have. Days are when I feel like I most suffer. Like, I do feel like, on a sleep standpoint of my life, I went through the toughest strain of my entire life when I first started a permanent nights position,
Ooh.
where I actually had to go on sick leave for 2 weeks because I didn't sleep for 5 nights in a row, and I
Holy
literally
shit.
thought I was going fucking crazy. And then I like had a couple of doctor's appointments, and they got me doing stupid shit. Like, they made me do like a sleep journal, and then they tried me on melatonin. But I had originally tried melatonin myself, and I was using these like swallowable pills, um, which I didn't think were doing anything to me. And then I got active quick release melatonin, where you just put under your tongue.
The sublingual, yeah.
Yeah, and then they just dissolve, and that started helping me a lot more. So
Nice.
it fixed that issue, because that was a weird period, man. I've never had that, but it was like 4 or 5 nights where I shouldn't say I didn't sleep at all. I think
Just
probably
not near enough.
3 of those 4 or 5 nights, maybe I got 2 hours of sleep.
Holy shit.
But a couple of them, I was literally awake the entire night, and then or entire day. That was the thing. I was working night shifts, so
Jesus.
I literally and then it was also my diet, which I think a diet, like, I don't know how much this book talks about eating and diets and stuff, but like that was a big thing. I was actively trying to do temporary fasting when I was doing that
Oh, man.
period, and then while this is where I royally fucked up. While I was doing the temporary fasting, I was also, when I would eat, I was eating smoothies.
Oh, man,
So
yeah.
it was probably a mixture of like that, but I had to change some habits, but since then, man, I think like not working days, in some ways, I've probably been getting the most sleep I've gotten in years. Like, even now, like working regular night shifts, my night routine is like getting home by like 7:30, and then sometimes I'll have a bite to eat, sometimes I don't. It just depends how I feel. I like brush my teeth, go to bed, and then I'll usually go on my phone for a little bit, maybe play my Switch for a little bit, but generally nothing long. Actually, I don't think I rarely ever play my Switch, to be honest, because I'm tired. Like, I'm usually phone off, lying down, taking my melatonin by 8, maybe 8:30 at the latest, and I sleep generally till, at the earliest, 3, sometimes 4, sometimes 5.
Nice.
So, like, in some ways, for me, I'm actually probably getting the most sleep I get when I work the night shift. So it helps me work my night shifts, because like it's hard to work night shifts.
For sure, yeah. And no, it's like, I don't know. You said the diet, and like he does have a quote here that I have open just by chance that I think is pretty good. But he says here that I was once fond of saying sleep is the third pillar of good health alongside diet and exercise. I have changed my tune. Sleep is more than a pillar, it is the foundation on which the other two health bastions sit. Take away the bedrock of sleep or weaken it just a little, and careful eating or physical exercise become less than effective, as we shall see. And so, yeah, it is like, obviously diet and exercise are huge, but like without sleep, you're almost wasting your time, kind of thing. Like,
Yeah, no, I can see that, and the importance of it. Like, I think, honestly, like, to build off kind of what he's saying, like, I agree. Like, sleep is that bottom platform, and then the other two just help. Like,
exactly.
I find if I've gone for like a nice walk outside, I sleep so much better that night. Like, so much better.
Yeah.
Or
even just walks.
if
People
I've
think
had like a
exercise
pretty
needs to
good,
be intense, but
yeah,
just do
no, man,
something.
I'm a fucking big dude. I don't do a whole lot of activity, but with work and working evening shifts, it's presented this lifestyle of like getting outside and just going for walks and enjoying nature a lot more. And fuck, man, like it's great. It's motivated me to get out more. I know I need to get out more than I do, but I do generally feel better and healthier, and I sleep better.
Mm-hmm.
Eating's a tough one for me. I don't know. I've done an amazing job the last few years of eating at home more. That doesn't necessarily mean I'm eating healthier all the time, though.
It makes a big difference, though. You'd be
Yeah,
surprised. Even if you're making unhealthy things at home, those don't even compare to the
yeah.
unhealthy
Like I don't have
stuff
a deep fryer, right? So like even
yeah,
when I'm eating unhealthier things, it's baked in an oven at least, which I know is a
yeah,
hell of a lot
exactly.
better than being deep fried in oil. So like there is that for sure.
And it's interesting too. Like he does talk later about how much sleep, essentially, like when you're sleep deprived, the like kind of like rational impulse control part of like your frontal lobe is essentially kind of like almost turned down, and then the like more instinctual like craving part and like the basal, like the more primitive part of your brain almost gets amplified. And so yeah, your body starts to crave fattier, carb-rich foods, and then the part of your brain that like knows no, I shouldn't eat that is like less
Oh
has
really?
less power. So yeah, you essentially by depriving yourself of sleep, you'll even make worse food choices, which
Hmm.
will then impact your sleep negatively, and it's kind of like a vicious cycle. But I don't know. You
Wow.
mentioned melatonin, and I just want to like give like kind of like a basic kind of overview of how like sleep functions and like the cycles that we go through, kind of thing. And so, I mean, one was a big myth. One was kind of new to me. Like you've obviously heard of like a circadian rhythm, right?
Yeah.
Like your daily rhythm. And so, I was interested to hear is it's not just one rhythm; it's actually two systems that contribute to that. And so there is like you have this like it's almost like a little 24-hour clock kind of just above your ocular nerve, like kind of right at the front center of your brain, kind of. And it's called the suprachiasmatic nucleus. But all it is essentially that's your 24-hour clock. That is the thing that keeps track of the cycle of day and night essentially in your body. And they actually did one crazy experiment where they fucking went into the Mammoth Cave, which is like one of the deepest caverns in the world. And this dude and his research assistant went and stayed down there for 6 weeks in complete darkness just to see whether their body could keep track. And it did essentially. But what they found is that our body's clock isn't quite exactly 24 hours. It's a little longer, but on average about 24 hours and 15 minutes. And so that's where the name came from. Because in Latin, circa is like around, and then diem comes from diem, which is day, like carpe diem or whatever. But so it's around a day, essentially.
Oh, okay.
Around a day rhythm. And so yeah, that's where melatonin comes in. Is that's how that part of your brain, your suprachiasmatic nucleus, that's how it tells the rest of your body. Melatonin is essentially the messenger molecule to be like, it's dark, it's dark. Like that's what melatonin does, is telling the rest of your body it's dark, time to get ready for sleep.
Hmm.
But it doesn't actually initiate sleep itself. It just tells the body that it should start getting ready for sleep, essentially. And so that's where the light comes in, essentially. Like, you're like, circadian rhythm does its own thing, and then melatonin tells it when it's dark, but that's how it kind of resets itself to stay within 24 hours so it doesn't go long because it's a little longer than 24 hours. Is that when it sees light, it's when it stops like melatonin production, essentially. And so you can see a graph that like kind of goes the melatonin concentration in your system.
Hmm. Yeah, I know. I did some like when I was going through that difficult time. Like I made sure because like I know you can fuck yourself over with melatonin too. Like if you abuse it too much. So like I don't take it when I'm not working night shifts.
Mm.
And then I try to wear sunglasses when it's sunnier in the mornings, like during that time of the year on
It's
the way
probably a
home.
good call.
And then I just black out my room completely. Like I have blackout curtains.
Yeah, the
So,
darkness is the biggest thing.
but yeah, that has helped immensely.
So yeah, that's like the main factor in sleep is that kind of 24-hour rhythm, which is like
Right.
aided by melatonin. But then the other biggest one that actually like makes you sleepy and kind of like puts you to sleep is a thing they call sleep pressure. And so the entire time you're awake, your brain's producing this, I think it's a protein or some kind of fucking some sort of chemical in your brain called adenosine, and that is the sleep pressure. So the longer you're awake, the more amount of that you have in your brain, and that's what induces those feelings of sleepiness, essentially. And so, and then it gets flushed away when you're asleep. So then it kind of goes on its own little 24-hour cycle too.
Okay.
And so then that's essentially how they can measure how sleepy you're feeling is essentially the distance between those two things on a graph. So if your circadian rhythm's like trending down, it's nighttime, and then the amount of sleep pressure is really high, the distance will be huge and you'll be really sleepy. So then that's why when you pull an all-nighter, you get that weird second wind. Because even though the sleep pressure is really high, your circadian rhythm kind of takes another upswing as the morning comes, and so then the distance between the two is shorter, so you don't feel as sleepy. So that's where that kind of second wind comes from.
That makes so much sense, man. Because like I know we've talked about this in previous conversations, but I always regret it. But a couple times after like getting off of nights,
And you just try to stay up all
I'm
day?
just gonna stay up. I'll have a nice espresso, like do some running around, and then I hit a wall at about 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon where I literally feel sick to my stomach.
Exactly.
Like, just like, why the fuck did I do this to myself?
And then that's when your body's, because it's starting its downward trend for the night, right? So that it just hits that much fucking harder because you have that much more adenosine in your brain.
This is a side story, but it's relatable. I remember we pulled an all-nighter once, and then we were both within our own families going to a concert the next day.
Oh my god, that destroyed me. I was sleeping for
Yeah,
a fucking
and
rock concert.
I literally was dozing off during that concert.
I also had to play a hockey game before that.
Really?
Yeah, I was dog shit. I was horrible. I was like nodding off on the bench and then getting out there and getting creamed. Right? It was brutal.
That's hilarious. Fuck yeah, I remember that a lot. All right.
But yeah, so it's kind of like that's just basically how sleep functions. And I guess interestingly enough, you mentioned espresso, but that's all caffeine does. Caffeine doesn't wake you up. All it does is it binds to the same receptors that adenosine binds to. So it's effectively blocking the sleep chemical from making you sleepy. But that's why when the caffeine wears off, that's why you get that caffeine crash. Because the whole time that adenosine's been building up, you just haven't been feeling it. So once the caffeine wears off, you just get walloped with fucking
okay, yeah, that makes
adenosine.
sense.
And so that's also why caffeine's not, it takes so long to flush out of your system. It like spikes after a half hour after you drink it. Then it takes like 6 to 7 hours to even reach half the concentration. Its half-life is like 6 hours. So even 7 hours later, you'll have half the amount of caffeine in your body blocking that sleep particle, right? So that's why it's good to like not drink it too late in the day. I used to drink coffee with dinner, but I've kind of cut that out now.
But would you like caffeine affects individuals differently though?
That's true too. Yeah, like some people's metabolism is really high, and that they can like kind of flush it out way quicker.
Right.
And some people is way different.
Because I was gonna say like I don't drink coffee. Oh, I shouldn't say that. I generally don't drink coffee later in the evening unless I'm working night shifts. But I've drank coffee late in a night shift and then came home and still slept no problem.
Mm-hmm. And that's kind of my issue is that I have to get to bed right away because if I hit that second wave and I've had a coffee to get through the last half of my night shift, that's when I get into trouble.
And I think that's what was happening with me when I wasn't sleeping. Is I was having troubles getting, and then all of a sudden that second wave hit, and there was like no chance I was even gonna sleep.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, no, that's kind of like essentially kind of like the mechanics of your sleep. And one thing that I found interesting is that it's not just your sleep that that circadian rhythm dictates. It also like essentially dictates when you're hungry, when you're going to go to the bathroom, and even like how you're feeling, like your moods and emotions are all tied to different parts of that rhythm. And so that's why even like they've noticed that even the likelihood of breaking an Olympic record has been clearly tied to time of day, being maximal at the natural peak of the human circadian rhythm in the early afternoon. So it's like even your performance is kind of tied to the time of day. So that's why nights really fuck with it, because even if you're like day night like rhythm is the same as far as like light and dark, your actual like sleep pressure system kind of gets all thrown the fuck out of whack, right?
Well, and I think this time of year is the toughest time to work nights.
Mm-hmm.
I literally don't see daylight when I'm working night shifts. Like, I don't.
No, I just see it kind of starting to come up when I'm driving home. I get
Kinda,
off at
yeah.
8 though, so but
I see. I'm off at 7, so like by the time it start, I can see. Like, I'm already in a dark room when I can tell from the hallway that the light is starting to come up. But
mm,
well, there's a piece here
mm,
like that, like well, and I knew this when I first got to working in healthcare and working shift work. I remember like working nights, starting nights, and like old nurses telling you like, "Oh, you don't want to be working nights forever. It takes years off of your life and stuff like that." And I see this piece here where it's the shorter you sleep, the shorter your life.
yeah, that's basically his recommendation at the end of the chapters. It's like that's
45% increased risk of developing or dying from coronary heart disease within 7 to 25 years from the start of the study. Which
and that
that's
was just from
crazy.
6 hours a night or something like that. 6 hours or less.
And that's the thing like, and I think knowing that this is me, and I think you're probably in this realm too. It's just like this is our lives for a while. Like, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I think we have aspirations and dreams of achieving bigger, greater things, but for what we do right now, it work for us. We make the money that pays our bills and allows us to do things beyond paying our bills. Like, we're not living paycheck to paycheck. I'm saving money to buy a house, right? Like, so it's like I know that this is my life, so I have to like work to make sure that I'm getting that sleep, and also work. And this is the part that I've done really bad that I need to do more is work like on that exercise piece and that eating piece. Because as long as like I'm working the night shifts, but I'm getting the sleep, I'm sure that helps. But I still need to do
Mm-hmm.
those other two big factors in order to really help. Like 7 years, man, like that's crazy.
I know, right? Well, and that's what was the biggest thing for me this past year is because I've been on like a big health kick. Like at the start of the lockdown, I don't know, I've maybe talked about it before, but I kind of really just went full hedonist. I'm just drinking and smoking and eating and like all that at the beginning of the lockdown last year, and I started to feel like shit. And so I had like a sustained effort to like change my habits. But I will say that it wasn't until reading this book and then kind of taking it to heart. Honestly, it because it felt like an uphill battle. It's so hard to change habits that just feel automatic. Like it doesn't even feel like I'm making bad choices. It just feels like I'm just it's just what I do. It's not even like it's a choice I have to change. It's like I have to change almost who I am, is what it almost felt like at times.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, it wasn't. It was so much easier once I like focused on my sleep first.
Yeah.
It was just like it felt like less like a choice. Like once I had my sleep under control, it wasn't as much of a battle to like pick healthier eating options or to get myself outside for a walk. Like it just all everything kind of almost fell into place once I got my sleep under better control.
Which, I mean, I think you trying to live a healthier lifestyle is something. It's weird. So it's something we've both struggled with, but I know in our friendship, especially in our adult friendship, you have as much as we've both struggled it, you have more actively pursued to change that than I have. And I think it's always been a struggle for you, and but maybe that's a piece that you've never really truly focused on, right?
It
Like you
wasn't
never
no.
focused on the sleep. Because I remember the days like when we were living together and you were like trying to live a healthier lifestyle, eating better, like smoking less, like all that kind of shit, and like
Yeah.
exercising more. I don't think you ever did focus on the sleep
Well, it
part.
just
Like
never
we were
felt
probably
like that.
still gaming till two
Yeah,
o'clock in
until
the
3 in the
morning,
morning,
right?
right? Yeah, it never felt like as much of a health thing. Again, I think because it was like portrayed as like being like a staying up late, sleeping in kind of guy as lazy. Sleep felt more like a personality thing than it did a health thing for a
Mm-hmm.
long time. Like it was just kind of like, are you a night person or a morning person? It is like a personality trait, not a vital component of your health, essentially.
Well, and I think for some people too, it's just like I don't know. I think it's crazy. I've seen this in our friends, and it definitely one how well people can function with very little sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And I get I get what this story is saying. Me in a lot of ways, I think to a lot of those people that are like that, they probably are going to pay the price later on in life unless they change that.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's just wild because like I don't know, like I know this is a cheesy saying, but I mean I definitely remember hearing a lot. It's like oh, I'll sleep when I'm dead kind of thing, right? But
He specifically, at one point in the book, he mentions that quote, and he's just like, well, unfortunately for them, that opportunity is going to come sooner rather than later if they keep living that way, essentially.
yeah,
Like, and it's not even so much that you're gonna like you have nasty things waiting for you down the road, like you're gonna have like health problems later on. But he does say, like, he specifically goes into a bit about how it does affect even just your normal baseline cognitive functioning quite severely. But if you do it for long enough, you just normalize it. Like, that just becomes your normal baseline, and you don't even realize that you're operating at a deficit. And so, one thing that really fucked me up, essentially, they did a study where they just lopped a couple hours off of people's sleep, so they're only sleeping 6 hours a night. But 10 days of 6 hours a night was all it took to become as impaired in performance as going without sleep for a whole 24 hours. So just going like about 2 weeks of just getting a little bit less sleep a night, eventually it's as if you pulled an all-nighter. And so what's frightening about that is that when they measured cognitive function of people that they just kept up, like just did one all-nighter, is that after being awake for 19 hours, people who were sleep deprived were as cognitively impaired as those who were legally drunk. So just literally being awake for 19 hours, your brain is essentially operating as if you just drank like 2 or 3 beers.
I feel like this study probably. Well, I'm sure lots of things have opened the eyes to like the trucking industry, but like,
Oh, especially, yeah.
like that's terrifying, man.
It's wild. And so that's the thing. And so he does paint a picture of like, it doesn't even have to be a crazy all-nighter. Even if you just woke up at 6 a.m. for work or 7 a.m. for work, go to work, come home, make food, and then go out with your friends at night and don't drink a drop of liquor. If you're driving them home at 2 in the morning that night, you're basically just, you're pretty much a drunk driver, at least cognitively. And like, exactly, we don't even imagine that because when you're the one experiencing it, you don't feel the decline, right? Like, you don't feel like you're at a deficit.
Does he get into marijuana and like the REM cycle thing at all?
He doesn't really touch on drugs except for the fact that anything that kind of fucks with your normal patterns of sleep is probably not great.
So has that changed your views on your marijuana usage?
Well, that's kind of a thing. Is it's just like, I mean, I already just for the idea of like you should have more nights sober than you do impaired, regardless. Like that's just probably good for you. But specifically the weed thing, because it inhibits REM sleep, that really did change my views on it in the sense that like, it might help people get to sleep, but it might be affecting their quality of sleep.
Yeah.
And so he defines, because there's REM sleep and there's non-REM sleep. And so a simple way that he kind of portrayed it is that like when you're awake, your brain is perceiving information. And then when you sleep, you're going to go through these 90-minute cycles where you go into non-REM sleep to REM sleep, back up to non-REM, and those happen in 90-minute cycles. But the ratio of non-REM to REM sleep changes. And so in the first half of the night when you're sleeping, you spend most of your time in non-REM sleep. And then in the back half, you spend most of your time in REM sleep. And so what's happening is essentially it's like when you're awake, you're perceiving, and when you're in non-REM sleep, your brain is reflecting on all the information and kind of deciding what's relevant, what can we trim away, just kind of big strokes, like what memories do we need to save. And then when you go into REM sleep, it's kind of like fine-tuning your memory and drawing new connections. And so that's like where a lot of your like creative stuff and like insights come from, is those connections made during REM sleep. And so it's weird that they're not evenly spread out through the night, but that's why waking up too early is almost just as harmful as going to bed too late, because you're losing out on one or the other. And so
does he go into anything like with like sleep paralysis and shit like that?
not really so much, but except just it's interesting that like when you're in REM sleep, you are completely paralyzed.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's
so that must be my issue then. When I must constantly wake, or not constantly, but when it happens, I must just wake up in REM, and then that causes me to feel as though I'm awake, but I can't move.
Yeah, and so it's interesting. I think it's not so much a neurotransmitter. That's the thing. He goes really deep in the sciencey part if you want to know that stuff too. It's a good read. But yeah, essentially your brain, you're acting out all the things in your dreams. It's just there's like basically like a guard, like a fucking cutoff between like where your spinal nerve where you would be acting those things out and the motor control portion of your brain. So in your brain, you're doing all the shit. It's just the connection to your muscles is basically cut off while you're in REM sleep. And so yeah, that's what's happening is that your brain's waking up before that gate gets opened back up, essentially.
So then, for example, like, because this is the part that amazes me. I should read this book, but like, yeah, like I touched on like my sleep paralysis. Like I wake up and I for whatever reason blamed it on marijuana because it started experiencing it when I was smoking marijuana in my early 20s, and then I don't smoke marijuana anymore, and I still get it quite frequently. Not as much, but I would say like maybe at least once a month. And then, but like, what's curious with the non-REM thing is I've done it a few times where like I'll be like screaming in a dream, and then my like Logan's just like can like I'm not actually screaming in real life, but I'm like doing like
trying to.
Yeah, like that's what it sounds like. Like it sounds like almost like a whining dog. But that's my full knowledge is I'm like in a dream and I'm yelling or something.
Just
like that.
as
But,
loud as you can. Fuck.
like Logan, she like actively talks in her sleep lots, and so
apparently me too.
like that must be so like you're dreaming like you're in REM and then you move to non-REM again in that cycle, which then probably causes some of those movements or some of those talking movements to actually happen. Then do you think is that what the explanation is there?
Well, I think it'd be more so that like, yeah, either that or you're almost like close to waking up during REM sleep.
Because she does it during the middle of the night generally.
Yeah, and like that's the thing. It could happen. It could be because you go through like it's like the 90-minute cycles, right? So it doesn't.
Well,
really
that's kind of what I was meaning.
Either one.
Like with the cycle. Like generally, like I don't know. Like it's hard. Like it's to me, I've always associated as she's having a dream, and the talking is just generally what's going on in the dream. But I never know. Like it's fucking weird. She's done a lot of like different things. Like,
yeah, dude. And sleep
I would
is
say
wild.
50% of the time it's generally like laughing or gibberish, which is still weird. But
yeah,
it's cute. But yeah, and then sometimes it's like full on, like legit talking. Like, and
that's
I can,
crazy.
or what's even funny, and this has happened a few times, and I think it's probably where she's awake but not realizing she's awake.
Mm-hmm.
Is like if I respond to it, and then she actually has a conversation.
Yeah, I do that all the time too. I guess.
Oh really?
Apparently, like yeah, like I'll like be talking in my sleep. Charles will respond to me and like yeah, like have a conversation, and then like ask me 2 hours later in the morning, waking up. Do you remember talking to me? Like no. What the fuck?
Yeah, that's the exact same thing with Logan.
Or
and,
I
like,
just
sometimes
laugh the
too
whole time,
for
apparently.
whatever the dream or the reason she's saying the things she said. If I respond to it and like depending on what her mood is, I'm assuming in what she's thinking about. Like she'll get snappy or kind of like angry at me too. Like it's funny.
That's funny.
Yeah.
No, and I love that shit, and I think that's the thing that I took away from it is that like it's only recently, like in like early 2000s, when we could like do like imaging of the brain and like study people sleeping while 3D imaging. Because before all we had was like electrodes and measuring brain waves, which is like it's useful for like general trends, but essentially he described it as for a long time if you think of the brain as like a football stadium full of fans and each fan is an individual neuron. Up until this point, all we've been able to do is just hang one microphone in the middle of the field and try to figure out what all the neurons are doing just from that one microphone. And then now with like functional MRIs and stuff like that, like other brain imaging techniques, for the first time we can actually now look into specific sections and see what each section of like the fans are doing, like of the neurons. And so it's like it's pretty relatively recent developments in the science, and it was kind of like the last like unexplored portion of like cognition and like the brain is like what the fuck is sleep and dreaming. Like we still have no fucking idea. It's kind of interesting, like it's still so new, but the main takeaway is just every new discovery is just essentially cementing the idea that sleep is like one of the most important fucking things you can do for your body.
Yeah.
Like he called it Mother Nature's best effort at contra death. Like it's our best effort of our bodies at trying not to die early, essentially. And that really fucking nailed it home for me. Like especially like with Alzheimer's in my family, it's huge. I guess what happens, like, it's something to do with like the glial cells like in your brain that kind of like glue neurons together. I didn't really completely understand it, but essentially what happens is that they shrink when you sleep, and then your like spinal fluid flushes out what they call amyloid proteins. And like we don't really know what causes Alzheimer's, but that's kind of the best functional hypothesis right now, is a buildup of these plaques from these amyloid proteins.
Hmm.
And so they essentially they think Alzheimer's is intimately tied to not getting enough sleep. But
I could see that because honestly, like, not that I'm trying to compare these as the same thing because I know they're not, but like, I feel like when you are really sleep deprived, like that is the closest thing you could feel to like having like early onset Alzheimer's, of just like being super forgetful.
mm-hmm.
Like obviously it's not to the point where you like don't know things and like you've forgotten how to do things, but I'm sure it can get that bad, man.
Your
I've
memory
even
gets
had like
worse. Yeah.
I've been like in like super sleep deprived where even like I know someone like well like she's in my life all the time, and just for whatever reason when I seen their face, like I just, that connection wasn't even there, like so
No, I believe it.
like so like I could see that, like that's kind of like that makes sense, it makes a
Well,
lot of
both
sense
like
actually.
I don't know. This is me weird and being free associative, but those are all states that seem intimately linked. Both the dreamlike state and then the Alzheimer's, and then specifically like psychosis and or like psychedelic experiences, because they are very similar. Just that weird dreamlike like time, you lose your sense of time, your memory gets wacky,
Mm-hmm.
um, your perception of the world around you gets wacky, and I think those are all very very linked in the sense that like I mean, oh, what was it? I was watching something with somebody with Alzheimer's and like just like not knowing where they are and freaking out, and my first thought was like, oh my god, that sounds like they're having a bad trip, and like I could honestly like I can't really like imagine like Alzheimer's or like dementia as just like being stuck in a permanent bad trip, and it kind of makes a lot of sense. Like,
Yeah, well, and that's what I'm curious about, like I know it's probably extremely difficult, and I'm sure people who have looked into Alzheimer's and dementia a lot, but like I'm curious, like I know obviously working with them and stuff or in the past, like I get what they're going through in a sense, but like through their eyes, like how are they visually understanding things is different.
I
Like I would
wonder.
love to know that piece.
Yeah, because the fact that like they can look right at you, the fact that my grandma could look right at me and then get like freakily like frisky. It's like,
Yeah.
motherfucker, this is your grandson. How are you not seeing me right
Yeah.
now? You know, but like, yeah,
But then what is she seeing? Like is it
exactly. That's what I
she's
mean.
seeing you as you but just not understanding that's you? Or is she seeing something else completely different, which I don't think is an area I don't know
Who
enough
knows?
about this, but like I wonder if that's kind of been dived into, because if
I
like
wonder.
we're talking about an alternative state when it comes to dreaming or psychosis or psychedelics, like it might make more sense that they're just seeing something completely different.
100%, right? Like whether it's the visuals are changed in how they're perceived, or the connections that they tie to those visual
Yeah,
stimuli are completely in disarray. Yeah, that'd be interesting to find out. And I wonder how much you
it
could
would
with the
almost
unreliable
make
narrator,
more
right?
sense. And you know what I
Yeah. Oh
mean?
yeah.
Because like I know it, I don't know. I know like memory is just in our brain and stored and stuff like that. So it also makes sense that that's just all of a sudden removed when like say my wife or my mom is in front of me and I can't recognize who they are.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's just easier to explain as no, they're just a different individual.
Like
I
you're
don't
just
know
perceiving a
them.
completely different
Yeah,
person. Yeah.
yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, a completely kind of sidetracked.
No,
But
that's the stuff that fascinates me. I guess
yeah, no,
I'm fascinated with like psychology and cognition and just consciousness in general. And for someone who literally went from not giving a shit about sleep and thinking of it a waste of time, and now it is just, I think it's like a fascinating window into how the mind operates.
mm-hmm.
I mean, even that Robin Carhart Harris, he's that guy doing psychedelic research. He gets quoted frequently in Michael Pollan's book, but that's also why there's so much renewed interest in psychedelic states in like the neuroscience communities, because by studying altered states of consciousness, we kind of get more insight into the normal waking
Yeah,
consciousness,
totally.
and so that's why some of the sleep stuff fascinates me. But
Hmm.
There is one thing here that I wanted to touch on too, both whether it was getting healthier or even just like working on not being so unhealthy. I do find like previous like struggles with mental health and things like that is that again, yeah, I didn't realize how much sleep is a huge factor. And this is from a separate study, not so much from Matthew Walker's book, but the quote is that sleep quality is the strongest predictor of depressive symptoms and well-being, followed by sleep quantity and physical activity.
Hmm.
So I guess it was kind of before I read this book, but that ended up kind of being my indicator, and still is now. Is like I can tell how well I'm doing mentally, like beyond just like subjective experience, but as like almost like a external marker for me to track how good I'm doing is my sleep. If I notice that I'm staying up late, gaming and eating more, I can tell that I'm like about to do bad or I'm already doing bad. It sounds strange, but
No, I totally know what you mean, man. Like I've been pretty on track with my sleep the past 2 years, I would say 3 years. Um, but I don't know. Recently, like with the break at Christmas, and I had a lot of time off, and
mm-hmm.
Logan had time off.
Christmas fucked me too, man.
We got into Overcooked, and we were playing till 2 in the morning, and I noticed like I was like I knew it wasn't gonna get there because my lifestyle now and the way I live my life can't allow me to get there in some ways. I could if I chose to, but like I knew I
mm-hmm.
wasn't gonna fully get there. But I knew that it was starting a bad trend, and if it continued that way, I could have gone into old habits and just like even my behaviors. I noticed I was acting a little bit more sporadic. I
Yeah,
don't know,
it's
but
wild, and it helps to track it over general trends like that. Because
but looking at my most depressive states in my time and like my life and I mean, I don't care. Like, I know we haven't delved into this too much, but I mean, clearly, I think what we're talking about now is touching on it. It's like I've
mm-hmm.
been diagnosed in the past with depression, and I've been on medications for it. But I'm not actively on medications or have had really any like true diagnosable depression in at least 6 7 years. I feel like at this point, 7 or 6 years, I think. But in my most depressive states, man, I wasn't sleeping well. Like, and
Mm-hmm.
so like to know that does make sense, and not like I wasn't sleeping well in the sense that I wasn't able to sleep. I was staying up just watching like Netflix or something like in my room, like just
For sure.
being doing nothing, like. And like I know there's an element too where a lot of people like oversleep when they're depressed, and I'm sure I
Mm-hmm.
got there at times, but I feel like looking back like into like the townhouse days when I was really going into a dark place, like I'd get home from work, I'd go up into my room, I'd turn on Netflix, and I would just watch Netflix most
Yeah.
of the night, and eventually I'd fall asleep, and I'd get up and do the same thing.
Exactly, and it's kind of like a chicken and egg situation for me, for so long where I'd be like, especially when you're feeling like shit, and then for someone to tell you that like, well, you just need to sleep better, you're like, or eat better, or exercise, all that shit. You're right. You're like, because you do it and you don't instantly feel better, and so it
Yeah.
feels like a complete fucking waste of time. But it's only with like a sustained period of having some decent habits that I notice how much the deviation from that norm affects me. And so the chicken and the egg thing comes in where it's just like, does being depressed make you sleep shitty or does sleeping shitty make you depressed? It kind of doesn't matter because whichever one comes first, they start to reinforce each other in this kind of like vicious cycle.
Hmm.
And so yeah, that's why sleep more so than anything, because I think is a good indicator for like, at least personally, like how I'm doing, because like I can't trust my own perception of my like inner state and thoughts and emotions, because
Oh,
you're
definitely I
you're
can't.
gonna skew those depending on your mood. But
Yeah.
sleep is the subjective kind of thing that you can just track, like how am I sleeping lately. And I
Hmm.
don't know, it's once I see that start to go, it's like it's a good indicator of I need to kind of focus on it and kind of address it right away.
Yeah.
And yeah, I found a lot of success in kind of tracking that as like my indicator of overall health.
Well, and I find it like it's kind of interesting too, like on that piece that you touched about, just like how like eating healthy or like doing exercise, you don't get that instant gratification for someone who's depressed and people are telling them that that's what they need to do.
Mm-hmm.
But like I'm trying to think like, and because I haven't like truly had to deal like with what I was dealing with when I was like diagnosable depression kind of thing. Um, when you had those good days, I certainly think you could probably attribute to that to a good night's sleep. Like I think if there was anything that was going to give you instant gratification, it was probably a good night's sleep.
100%. You'll feel that, I think, a lot more acutely than you will eating a fucking salad.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, no, for sure. And so yeah, that's kind of my message is just fucking sleep better, because especially for shift work, to get more into the shift work in the brain.
Yeah.
It's wild. Actually, one thing I want to touch on just with the food thing too, what was interesting is, again, another way that it can be like a perpetual cycle if you're not sleeping well and if your diet makes you not sleep well. But what also happens is that when you're sleep deprived, there's leptin is a hormone in your body, and that's what gives you the feeling of feeling full. And then there's ghrelin, which is like the appetite stimulating hormone, the thing that makes you hungry. And what's interesting is that when you are sleep deprived, it's like a double pronged attack. It decreases the amount of leptin you feel and increases the amount of ghrelin in your body. So it just essentially makes you hungry all the time, and you're not able to get full, which is like a recipe for fucking disaster.
That makes sense.
While you're in sleep mode too, it's essentially when you're sleep deprived, your body just wants to hold on to all the fat it can, because it kind of goes into like a fight or flight response when you're sleep deprived.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where you get all this stuff with anxiety and depression too, is because essentially what it does is it puts your sympathetic nervous system, like the fight or flight response, that's normally only ever supposed to fire for short periods of time, right, during life-threatening situations. But because you're at such a reduced capacity when you're sleep deprived, your body essentially is freaking out 24/7, like, we're in danger. And so then that's kind of like where you get all the weird health effects, like, because then your heart is elevated all the time. That's where the heart shit comes in. Your nervous system gets fucked because you're anxious all the time. That's where anxiety and depression come from. Essentially, like, it's just like a fucking cascading effect just from not sleeping well. And so then the way that bleeds into our line of work is with, like, by throwing those things out of whack, that's how you get all these wacky fucking health risks. So, like, even things like diabetes, which comes from that kind of insulin regulation that comes with, like, your appetite. Any period of shift work is associated with a 9% risk of developing diabetes. Essentially, your brain looks 10 years fucking older if you shift work for 10 years. Participants who had worked with a rotating shift pattern for 10 or more years were found to have a much lower overall cognitive and memory scores than those who had never worked in that manner. The lower scores were found to be equivalent to a 6.5 years of age-related cognitive decline.
Which you're like at what, 2 years away from 10 years of shift work?
Yeah, basically. Well, yeah. This year is 10 years. I think like my seniority thing starts in 2011, so.
Really?
Yeah.
This is your 10th year?
10 years of this kind of bullshit, yeah. And so, yeah, that's really pushing me to, like, I need to find a line of work that doesn't require my body on the line as much.
Yeah, I mean, my perfect situation is doing the line of work that I do, just doing it on a better schedule.
Yeah.
Like, I love what I do. I don't even mind the evening shifts. Like, I think the evening to day shift differential isn't terrible.
Yeah, that's not as bad. I think the evenings, too, are better for those types of people that would be the night owl, like the later to bed, later to rise kind of thing. Like, that's like the perfect shift for those kind of people. You're starting your shift at your, like, peak cognitive capacity kind of thing.
Well, there's working with people that have done those kind of shifts. There's a lot of people I've found prefer those shifts.
I think I prefer evenings over days, but
yeah, I prefer the shift of evenings over days. For my life, though, days work better than evenings.
Yeah, you get to be more of a normal person with that.
But well, yeah, and that's the thing, right? Like, depending
it's more so like your social part of your life. Yeah,
that's why nights isn't terrible. Because
it's not bad. You can still hang out with people in the evening too, right?
Yeah, they allow me to do things still in the evening, but I don't feel super motivated to do things because of the night.
That too. Yeah, that's basically my spiel. Just like,
I love it.
Big for everybody, but it fucks with shift workers especially. So
I think I should definitely take a read on this book.
Yeah, I know it's a good read for sure. I guess one last thing that really perfectly illustrated to me how fucking vital sleep is, and how what feels like not a big deal, like even an hour here or there, shaving it off is. He says that you can literally see it in the statistics. If you look at the daylight savings time switches, when we lose an hour in the fall, the rate of heart attacks and strokes the next day spikes, like statistically significantly. Just from losing 1 hour of sleep, the amount of people that have a heart attack the next day spikes. And then the reverse is true too. When we gain that hour in the fall or whatever, the average rate drops.
Really?
Yeah, it's fucking wild. That was like, holy, like that's like on such a large population, that's like a perfect illustrator of how important this shit is to your just health.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So yeah, get your shut eye, people.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I definitely need to probably get that in check more as I'm trying to slowly pursue a bit of a healthier lifestyle. Cause I'm starting to realize, being a bigger guy myself, it's funny. I've been lucky enough that despite being a bigger guy, I've been the same waist size since I was in grade 10.
Damn.
But I'm slowly realizing that dream of achieving that might come to an end if I don't get a little healthier here. So I gotta switch that up. It's weird, yeah. Like I've always
crazy.
been a bigger guy, but I've managed to keep the weight that I'm at for
Pretty stable.
10 years now, I guess. So
fuck, if you look in my closet, there's like a range of like everywhere from 32 to 38.
yeah. I guess like there's a bit of a range there, and like of course I still occasionally get a tight shirt, but
Yeah.
it's like no.
Doesn't help that all a bunch of clothes that are the same size could be wildly different.
Yeah,
in
no,
actual
exactly.
size. That's so fucking frustrating.
But yeah, no, it's something that I've been thinking about more, and the more I think about it, I need to actively pursue that. And
fair enough.
on that
It's
note,
possible, my brother.
I'll be going for a walk after this podcast.
Nice. I'm gonna do my lame little calisthenics strength routine at home.
I gotta do that too. I got a few things that I could.
It's sad how much push-ups kicked my ass at the beginning of the
Oh
quarantine.
fuck! I wouldn't even be able to do a push-up, man. So
No, it's crazy, and it's just honestly the biggest thing that helps is don't compare to other people. Just like once you get in the habit and then just compare yourself to your own progress, it's so fucking like thrilling to like just feel yourself getting better at something, devoid of anybody else's ability.
Yeah, totally.
is super thrilling. And yeah, that kind of sums it up. This is my armchair science man spiel on.
yeah, no, and I think these are kind of like the just random. Generally, I want to say sciencey kind of topics that we'll dive into on one-off episodes. I think we got one planned coming up here in a couple weeks, and yeah, we this is kind of just what we wanted to do with this.
For sure.
But on that note, I think we'll wrap it up here. For those who don't know already, we are officially on Spotify and a bunch of other platforms, but Spotify is the more well-known one.
Wherever you find your podcasts, there's a good chance we're there now.
Yeah. And continue to check us out though on YouTube with the video format, and hopefully we can bring more exciting things to that format. And just another week. We'll see y'all next week.
Take care of each other, and with this in mind, take care of yourself too.
Yeah.
Get some shut-eye.
Get some sleep, peeps. Good night.
Good night.